apologise in advance for the slight technical hitch there. It's taken me about 18 months to get used to Team and Zoom, and now I've got a little mallard duck. Guys, in advance for the slight technical top left in the corner. It's taken me about 18 months to get used to Team and Zoom. Wednesday the 30th of July. A little mallard duck. Good morning and a very warm welcome to the Grand Enforcement Summit. I apologise in advance as Mark wouldn't let me say anything about football, but irrespective of the result, one thing I can guarantee is that the first half of this summit will 100% be better than last night's first half. No offence to the second half today, as that's obviously going to be totally awesome too. But come on, England, really? Carla loves a bit Harry Kane. Anyway, swiftly moving on. Thank you, Mark and Landor, for asking me to open today's proceedings. I'll quickly bore you about myself and Marston, if I may. I joined Marston almost 20 years ago to the day as a bailiff. At the time, we were a small little office in Waltham Abbey with 150 people. Now we've got 25 offices and over 6,000 staff. So having watched the firm evolve and diversify, we're now able to offer private and local authorities, obviously all enforcement services from certificated EAs to High Court, DVLA clamping, untaxed vehicles, and more recently we've moved into the tech EV charging and video alert and air quality, to mention a few. But back to today's running order. As you'd expect, it's a fully packed agenda for Mr. Moran. Extremely interesting, and hopefully it'll be a very entertaining day for you all. So the first session kicks off with enforcement trends, clean air zones, moving traffic. Yes, it's finally here. Part 6 is finally coming. Are you ready? We're then going to be doing some school streets, Robert Shoebridge, some driver engagement, and then some partnership working that Richard Walker from NEPP will be talking about. Mr. Nick Lester Davis is charged and having the pleasure of chairing the morning session, and opening the batting will be Mr. Nick Ruxton-Boyle, who's Director of Environment at Marston. Nick will guide us through traffic management measures aimed at helping us reduce pollution in our towns and cities. And after Jack from Camden steps into the crease, Jack is project lead at Camden on engine idling. He's got a fantastic task I've just seen in the green room, and he wants more focus on engagement and education rather than just going straight to enforcement. Then we have Rob Shoebridge from Derby. Rob picks up the baton and we'll talk about compliance and engagement. Last time I heard Rob talk, he did a fantastic piece about what Derby City are doing with cameras outside schools. So I'm sure that will come up in the Q&As. And as briefly mentioned, Richard Walker will end the morning session talking about partnership within NEPP. Nick will then chair a Q&A discussion. The panel is going to discuss education versus enforcement, how to encourage greater compliance, part 6, pavement parking, nuisance parking. So Bournemouth last year during the lockdown, Southend, a lot more staycations. We all need to work together on that. To help Nick and the panelists drive a healthy debate, we need questions, and we need lots of them. So there's over 150 people on the platform. Please ask as many questions as you can. There's no such thing as a stupid question. If you're shy, leave it anonymous or just put it down as my name. Then 11:30, we have a quick toilet break, cup of something hot and bite to eat. Back for 12, where Chris Naylor from the IPC will chair this afternoon session. And that will involve pressure points, dealing with vulnerable debtors, training and development, fraud appeals and managing appeals, and some parking on private land. Russell Hamblin-Boone is the first up, Chief Exec from Civia. This is a debt recovery session. It's a 2-part presentation on how we as a sector responded during COVID. Obviously, EAs were not allowed into people's houses, quite rightly. We were then allowed back, but not allowed in people's houses. So what's happened post-COVID and now, as finally the green shoots of recovery appear to be popping up. So Russell will tell you what's going to be happening over the next 6 to 12 months. And it has actually enabled us to accelerate what reforms were being suggested in our sector. But I won't bore you with that anymore and steal Russell's thunder. Next up, we've got Andrew Graves, an investigations expert from London Borough of Camden, with David Glenister, parking investigations officer from Camden. And then Helen Addis from Bristow and Souter will talk about why it matters to consider vulnerability in enforcement. As we all know, not all disabilities are physical or can be seen. So local authorities will not know when they're issuing a PCN or a liability order that someone could potentially be vulnerable. So Helen will explain what Bristow are doing in this field and highlight how they subsequently deal with it. Steve Penny, who heads up Marston's Learning and Development, is then going to be talking about what quality actually means to us within training, how important it is to Marston in maintaining such a high bar, which obviously reflects on our EAs, our clients, and obviously reputational risk. And Paul Slowey, director from BPFI. Paul's going to talk about blue badge fraud. Personal pet hate of mine, blue badge fraud. Literally cannot stand it. We work closely with Connie at Mobility Finance in Southwark, and we highlight to Connie persistent evading, persistent PCN abuse for blue badges. She's helped us remove countless vehicles for our clients. One in Westminster had over 800 PCNs, and he was using his car as a mini cap. Absolutely shocking. Anyway, enough of that rant. I'm sure Paul will tell you of ways of how to detect and deter blue badge fraud. I'll 100% be listening to Paul. Then to close the show, we've got Jonathan Hector from Video Alert, who's going to be talking about all things ANPR. The technology has advanced significantly over the last 5 years. So John's going to tell you about how and why. Finally, housekeeping. Obviously, no planned fire drills at my house, and I know exactly where the fire exits are. I hope you all have a fantastic and enjoyable day. Please ask questions. It will help the chair drive debate. You'll be glad to know that's all you're going to be getting from me. Without further ado, I shall now hand you over to the very capable Mr. Nick Lester-Davis, who's joining us from his new swanky house in the Highlands. Nick, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here at what's quite an important summit, I think. Enforcement is, of course, one of the 4 E's of managing traffic, the others being engineering, education, and encouragement. And sometimes I think enforcement is a bit of a dirty word in some areas. And I think partly this is because on too many occasions, people see enforcement as the first response to a problem. But it is only one of the 4 E's, and arguably it's almost always better to use some of the other E's first to try and resolve a problem. But enforcement certainly is needed, and it will be needed increasingly in the future, particularly as things like Part 6 of the TMA gets rolled out to the rest of the country. We will be seeing new areas of enforcement taking place in all over the place and all over the country. But whatever it is, to my mind, enforcement needs to have 3 components. It should be effective, it should be proportionate, and it should be fair. And I think that's why today's session is so important, because the lineup of speakers that Mike has run through for this morning's session will look at different areas of enforcement and how effective, proportionate, and fair they are and should be. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over first to Jack Alexander. Jack is the project officer for Idling Action London from the London Borough of Camden, and he's going to be talking about how we engage with motorists on engine idling issues. Over to you, Jack.
Thanks, guys. I'm just sharing screen. Forgive me. And you should be able to see now, I think. Right, so I work for a project called Idling Action London. So I'm a little bit employed by Camden and I'm a little bit not.
Jack, your screen share has gone off.
My screen share's gone off. Never that. Give me a second, guys. Thank you very much. How are we now? Good now? I'm going to take it as a yes. All righty. Okay, yes. So I work for Idling Action London. It's a Mayor's Air Quality funded project that really runs pan-London. We work with all but 2 local authorities across London. The project looks like myself and my colleague, who's called Natalie. So we kind of split London between us and work with lots of partner local authorities. We do work with schools. We do work with businesses as well. Yes, I think the kind of 4 E's of kind of before enforcement, maybe encouragement and education are definitely 2 of our focuses in the project. So we tackle poor air quality by tackling idling engines. And when we're talking about idling engines as part of this project, we're talking about an engine that's pulled over at the side of the road, not in kind of in stationary traffic. So this project involves a lot of engagement, a lot of face-to-face engagement, work with schools, idling action events, which I'll explain a bit more later, where we might go and talk to people through their car windows, like you can see this person down here, and some kind of comms work, some engines off stuff, and an advertising campaign, but I'll come on to that. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is kind of explain our approach with the project, explain the problem, and then outline why enforcement alone is not necessarily suitable for tackling this issue to do with air quality. So why tackle vehicle idling? Because I don't know how much of a background everyone attending might have in air pollution. More than half of the NO2 pollution in London, nitrogen dioxide that is, comes from road traffic. So we know that leaving your engine on is going to be making pollution that is damaging for the heart, for the lungs, and the brain. Idling will create localized bursts of pollution, and it's often something that happens in high footfall areas and air quality critical spaces. Air pollution doesn't affect us all equally. The elderly, children, and people who have underlying health conditions are more vulnerable to pollution. But unfortunately, this is often places where idling happens is around schools, around care homes, around hospitals, things like that. So we know that if you're idling your engine, pollution will quickly build up around and inside your vehicle, and even short-term exposure affects the body immediately. Idling is unnecessary, it happens at key locations, and it's a really visible type of pollution. So it's something that Londoners and people across the country are going to be increasingly conscious of as an issue, as something that's going to be creating pollution that's bad for their health and bad for the health of people around them. So how we tackle idling is with positive messaging. We act locally, so we work with all of these local authority partners, on a very local level. Under normal circumstances, we do loads of face-to-face engagement. Obviously, the last 18 months, I don't even know how long it's been, of a pandemic have been not brilliant for that. So we've transferred a lot of our resources and our campaigning into an online offering and kind of adapted a lot of what we do. But we're still leading with a real community-led approach. We work directly with businesses, and we kind of have a business engagement part of this project as well that I'll come on to, and of course with local authorities. And a separate part of the project is we work with local authorities to share best practice for idling enforcement. And that's what I'm going to come on to first, is this enforcement aspect, before I tell you why we need to do all the other bits of work that we do to support that as well. So this is the slightly dry slide with no pictures, but it does have numbers, so get into that. Idling is illegal under the Road Traffic Act of 2002, which means it's a finable offence, and it's finable when it's enforced by local authorities. Enforcing against idling is something that is very challenging, and I will kind of come on to that as well. So this is often enforced by PCN, penalty charge notices, or FPN, fixed penalty notices. So generally a fine of 40 to 20 quid, which might double if you don't pay it in time. So in the last year, 2020 to 2021, data from 26 of our local authorities. We had over 13,000 drivers engaged by enforcement teams, but only 529 fines issued. And the vast majority of these were issued around Heathrow Airport. For quite a lot of interactions that enforcement teams that might be working for the council, or enforcement teams that might be in-house, loads of interactions that we're having with drivers, but translating these into fines is just not something that really happens. That is because of the wording and the interpretation of existing idling legislation, this 2002 Act. Basically, the contravention is not cooperating with the enforcing officer. The contravention is not the act of idling itself. Ergo, an officer has to ask a driver to switch off their engine, give them the opportunity to switch off, and only then, when a driver is not complying, might a fine be issued. Which largely means that most people are going to switch off and not get a fine. So there are a lot of challenges with leading with an enforcement approach on idling, given the existing legislation. This existing legislation is not something that's very easy for us to change from a kind of London project standpoint, and yeah, kind of depends on more national kind of Department of the Transport type stuff, which is a little bit beyond the control of the two of us running this project. Yes, it's a bit of a challenge for enforcement teams, especially private enforcement teams, that might not be able to prioritize or resource kind of having these conversations with drivers that might not result in fines. Another barrier to enforcement as well has been that there isn't official idling signage from Department of Transport. So it's quite difficult for boroughs that we work with to set up traffic management orders. That means that you could have a PCN route, penalty charge notice, and have higher fines, and have traffic officers enforcing as well as civil enforcement officers. So there are a lot of barriers to enforcing effectively, and that's where all of the other work that we kind of do comes into play as well. So we share best practice with all of our partner boroughs on how they can enforce. If you're interested in that, please do get in touch with me afterwards, and I can send you some of those resources that we've been sharing. And I will come on to the real main part of my work, and what that looks like on a day-to-day is education and kind of raising awareness for a bit of behaviour change. We do loads of work with schools, which is our real focus, especially primary schools, which we know as idling hotspots. And we work with community groups. We get volunteers involved. I'll give a workshop to the kids about idling, and we'll make these banners, like this little blue thing is in the bottom corner of the screen, that schools can kind of use, so that drivers passing the school, so that parents, whoever's picking up the kids, know about idling as an issue and know about it as something that's bad for air quality and bad for health of the kids and health of people around them. We train air quality champions after these sessions. So I'll do a workshop with the kids, then with maybe a small group of kids or parents or volunteers, I will talk to them about how we can approach drivers in a really effective way. And we'll kind of talk about some facts that we can share about air pollution and about idling. And we'll hit the streets, basically. We'll go out and we'll start spreading the message about idling. And we will ask anyone that we see with engines on to please switch them off. So it's the real kind of meat of the behaviour change element of this project is a real face-to-face interaction. We might give people myth-busting facts about idling. A lot of people think that if you switch off and then switch back on, you're going to be making more pollution. We've done a bit of research quite recently that has found out that if you're idling for 30 seconds, you're already making double the amount of pollution than if you switched off and switch back on in most occasions. We're doing new work with hospitals as well, which is quite exciting. A lot of London's hospitals are also idling hotspots. And this kind of draws together some of our work with businesses, which I'll come on to on the next slide. And again, this kind of on the streets engagement with volunteers talking to drivers. So the Engines Off campaign is a slightly different aspect of our work, which is focused on business engagement and kind of getting organizational commitments from especially local authorities, anyone with kind of a big fleet, public sector bodies, whoever they might be, anyone with lots of cars. They will promise that those drivers will switch their cars off when it's safe and possible to do so. So we provide free resources, and resources in this instance often means this YouTube video in the bottom corner of the screen, which I've put together, which has kind of got a training is possibly too formal, but it's an educational resource to share with drivers on your team on how you can really easily reduce vehicle emissions and reduce driver exposure to toxic pollutants as well. Yes, we can kind of help organizations that we work with make an Engines Off pledge. It's a really great way of signaling engagement and of kind of demonstrating a commitment to air quality issues, something that increasingly people, the public, are very conscious of and want to see our local authorities and our businesses kind of walking the walk as well as talking the talk. So it's a really great way of signposting a commitment to air quality issues. We can help organizations make this pledge, and this pledge can be quite flexible. Typically, it's this one I've got in blue in the corner. We pledge to reduce vehicle emissions and tackle avoidable air pollution. Our fleet drivers and employees will not idle their vehicles whenever possible, brackets, and safe to do so. So this can't be a kind of blanket commitment, because we know that lots of the fleets that we work with might have specialist equipment on. There might be buses with cameras on. There might be vehicles with machinery on that need to idle to kind of run kind of essential operations with that vehicle. So it can't be a blanket commitment, but it can be something that is if drivers all have the appropriate education, which we give you guys, they can make that call in each situation, whether it's appropriate to switch your engine off. So it's a really good way of just avoiding unnecessary and very visible episodes of pollution that people are very conscious of. If anyone attending would like to get in touch to hear a bit more about the Engines Off pledge, how you could take the pledge, how we could help promote your commitment, do get in touch. This is a really great one for local authorities in particular. Of course, we are working with all our kind of 31 local authorities in London to make sure that they take this pledge by the end of this project next March. But the resources we have are free to share. So if other local authorities would like to use them, please do get in touch. Businesses are also free to use this, free to use these resources. Don't just have to be London businesses. Again, they're free resources we can share with you. Yes, so please do get in touch, and I'll put my details up at the end. Especially for businesses who might be enforcing against idling or enforcing air quality initiatives anyway. We think it's really important to kind of walk the walk as well as talking the talk. My colleagues in Marston Holdings, who you'll be hearing from a bit later, have already taken the Engines Off pledge. Yeah, we're kind of really, really happy with that. Another aspect of what we do as well to raise public awareness against around pollution is our Engine Off Every Stop campaign. Confusingly different from the Engines Off campaign, which is our business engagement one that I just spoke about. Engine Off Every Stop is an advertising campaign which we put together and we launched in February this year. So we put together, we kind of worked with a couple of agencies on making these images, and we've got a video as well. And these look like billboards across London. We put billboards up for a couple of weeks. We got all of our local authority partners to share things on their Twitter, on their newsletters simultaneously, which is no mean feat. If I do toot my own horn, it's quite unusual to get such a kind of unanimous kind of line on one issue from one time from local authorities like this. And it's about engaging with Londoners so that they know about the invisible effects of air pollution. So it's really what we kind of run for in this campaign, and the images that you can see little versions of. If you want to see bigger ones, search idling action, and they are on our website. that yes, it's about raising awareness about the effects of air pollution on the body, and that if you could see the pollution that you were creating by leaving your engine running, you'd kind of think twice and maybe switch off your engine. So we were keen to share these at roadside locations, which is why we opted for billboards. We had radio adverts as well, kind of drive time slots and that kind of thing to really target drivers. We had petrol pump adverts as well on nozzles and petrol stations to really kind of get the message out to drivers at the point of idling, which is really important for our behaviour change. We're going to be running a next round of this ad campaign, likely late September, but watch this space because we are TfL funded. It's been a bit of a marathon, but this has been a really great way of raising awareness about idling and engaging Londoners. When we go out and talk to drivers at our idling action events on the streets with volunteers, not everyone that we talk to is conscious, is kind of knowledgeable about what the word idling might mean. It's kind of not a word that comes up for everybody every day. So it's really good in kind of raising that literacy and getting a bit more understanding on quite abstract air quality issues in a kind of real context. And that's why we've kind of chosen these images of kind of real day-to-day situations of idling. So to kind of wrap up a bit, because I know I kind of spoke about enforcement a little bit earlier, fines and enforcement are really great in framing the issue for us. They're really great in making people take idling a bit more seriously if you know it's illegal. However, there is significant kind of limitations in the effectiveness of issuing these fines. And there are lots of barriers in our doing so. So it's very important for us to support this approach kind of within the kind of existing legal frameworks of what idling enforcement might look like, with a lot of in-person engagement, with working with schools, with talking to drivers kind of in communities, with listening to residents to find out where idling is a kind of a real issue in neighbourhoods, because it kind of moves around as a problem. And yeah, kind of getting visibility on the issue and in driving behaviour change and awareness. Lots of our work is about messaging and about getting messages out to drivers, either face-to-face or with these kind of ad campaign images that I've showed you. Do look us up at our website, Idling Action London, if you want to see some bigger pictures of these ads, and we've got a little video as well. And our Twitter's a great one to keep up with what we do. I'd really encourage all businesses and local authorities with fleets who want to make a kind of commitment to air quality to give me an email, and we can talk about how we can share these engines off resources with you. They're free. It's a really easy commitment to make. It's kind of yeah, not a huge way out of the way, especially if you've already got kind of commitments like FORS, etc. in your organizations. I will wrap up there. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much, Jack. I found that a fascinating balance between enforcement and encouragement and education. And I think that's one of the things that we're really looking for in the future. There will undoubtedly be lots of questions coming up from that, which we'll try and bring in the discussion session. But I now want to turn to Nick Ruxton-Boyle from Marston's, who's going to talk about clean air zones and how traffic enforcement can impact on that. Nick, over to you.
Hi everyone. Thank you. Let me just try and share my screen if that's possible. Is that sharing, Mark? No, it looks like I've got my whole desktop. Can everyone hear me? Mark, is that okay? No? Okay.
Perfect. Ready to go.
Ready to go. Okay, that's me then. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jack, for stepping into my slot on the agenda. I do apologize, everyone. I, like Mike, I'm trying to get used to a new platform, but I think it's all sorted now, and good that Jack went first, actually, because Marston were one of the first organisations to sign up to the anti-idling pledge. We have a fleet of about 1,500 vehicles, and yes, very, very good campaign, and we've got some incredible telematics systems in all our vehicles that show us exactly what they're doing, and the anti-idling pledge was a natural fit to our environmental pledges. Pardon me. So this morning, my presentation is on clean air zones, and I've called it "and other traffic management measures," because there are lots of different ways in which we can manage traffic and enforce these controls to reduce pollution. Ultimately, most of these have been designed to reduce pollution. I work for Marston Holdings. My name's Ruxton-Boyle, and I'm the Director of Environment. And we're a technology company, very, very different to the company Mike joined 20 years ago. I've been with the company 3 years now, and very much part of the technological drive and growth that we've had over the last 3 years. And there's a range of our sub brands there. Some of you will know NSL, Video Alert for cameras, Product Center for our consulting, but we very much are at the forefront of sort of enforcement. I think we're the biggest enforcement group in the UK. I think Mike said around 6,000 of us now in Marston, so it's very much a player in enforcement. I'm very happy today to be talking at an enforcement summit. I think it's first time I've presented at this summit, and I'm a transport planner by trade, so I was quite far away from the enforcement end of traffic management. I was very much used to writing business cases and designing policy and strategies to address issues that we have on street, and it was only since joining Marston that I understood and appreciated the importance of enforcement in achieving what these strategies and policies set out to do, be they environmental or economic or societal, and ultimately that's why we do what we do. You know, you've all seen these before. These are the three pillars of sustainability: the economy, society, and environment. And this is why we do what we do in traffic management terms, and why we try to address the issues of transport and travel, and why we do this hasn't changed at all. These still hold strong. What has changed, and what does change over time, is relative priorities. I call them relative priorities because they do change, and they're different, and they hold different weights in different parts of the country and different parts of the world, but they still ring true. That this is why we do what we do, and that hasn't changed, certainly in my eyes. How we do it, however, has, you know, and this is technology, and technology is changing all parts of our life. We're all here today on a virtual conference rather than in a room in a town hall somewhere chatting, but how we do it is changing, and has changed, and will change in the future. We try to think 2, 3, 5 years in advance. We don't know what technology is likely to be and how we will go about our enforcement activities, but it's changing. The technology is changing, and the third thing for me is the public. And Jack talked about behaviour change. That is really key, you know, to this. And even Nick mentioned that the 4 E's. That took me right back to my first days at local authority, being a traffic engineer in 4 E's. But certainly behaviour change is key to this, and public perception is changing. You know, I think and lockdown has accelerated this. The public and our friends and family are now more mindful of some of these priorities, and clearly the environment is being big. I think I read an article. One guy, he's been working from home, and he opened his window and he could hear the birds. You know, it was that different during lockdown. You know, and it really gave him a different appreciation of you know the impact of transport and travel and the roads. And sorry, pardon me. So I mean the bottom line here, I put this together, and it for me, it's helped me try to understand the role of enforcement. And for me, control is ultimately what we do as traffic and transport professionals. You know, we try to control what people do, where they leave their car or how they use the roads, and that's important. But ultimately, you want people to abide by the controls that you set in place. You want good compliance, and you want to realize the benefits of why you put the control in the first place. And you probably all know this, but enforcement is key to that, really. Notwithstanding the other E's, if it's not enforced, the behavior change might not be there. So for me to achieve those benefits, which is why you put the controls in the first place, enforcement, this is a realization of me. You are all enforcement experts. You probably know this. You've known this for years. But for me, it was quite a moment when I was putting these slides together to realize that the role enforcement has in achieving those benefits, and those public health benefits is where they are. So technology is moving on. We still have a requirement for the human part of enforcement, and tickets on the windscreens of cars. That is still a part of what we have to do, what we need to do. But obviously the digitalization of everything is moving forward, and at the bottom there is one of our cool mobile enforcement vehicles with cameras, and this thing literally just drives around, ping 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 ping. It can pick up so much information and data, and it can enforce against a whole range of different things. And this is where enforcement is heading, and we've all got to appreciate and realize this, and this is where it goes. So next slide. No, here's a slide. So that's moved on. Great stuff. So clean air zones was the title of my piece today, but I wanted to cover off some of the other stuff as well, and they're rather they're kind of known as urban vehicle access regulations, which isn't a very sexy term, but it's fairly common, and it's been around for years, decades, and there are thousands and thousands of these schemes across Europe, and we have our versions of these. We're relatively new to this, but there are lots and lots and lots of these schemes under this banner. And clean air zones, we all know about clean air zones. They're up and running, they're live. We might end up with 7 or 8, I think, but these are the mandated ones from government. I think there'll be lots more over the next 3 to 5 years. Low emission zones in Scotland, that's what they're known as. We'll cover those off. Low traffic neighbourhoods, having lots and lots of press at the moment. Good and bad. School streets, workplace levy. These are all existing legislation that is in place and has been in place for many years that authorities can use to deliver solutions, and again addressing new priorities or change priorities. And road duty charging is again another generic term. We've charged for the use of the road for decades, with parking charges and various ways, and these are all road duty charging, and this is where I think that the public perception is changing. I think now there's more of a willingness or less of a reluctance to pay for those trips. So moving quickly on to clean air zones. Bath, the first one, up and running now, 100 days, and it's a relatively small scheme. We're providing the cameras for this and some of the enforcement back office solutions, and it's up and running. It's had relatively good press. It's a relatively small scheme. Cars are not included in Bath, unlike Birmingham. So that's the way that they chose to do this. And there's a variety of charges. You can see on the right here how the traffic is charged, and it's up. Traffic in Bath is back above pre-pandemic levels from the latest data, and this is the case across most of our big cities now, as far as I've seen, and these schemes are needed as much as anything. Bath were forced to put this scheme in by the government, but they've taken the ball by the horns. They're putting in lots of solutions. They've got a huge variety of assistance for taxi drivers, for bus fleets to upgrade, as most of these has, so there's the there's the encouragement and the education package as well as the enforcement, but the enforcement is all done by ANPR and essentially bolts on to the council's current enforcement regime, and it's up and running 100 days, and this is one of their air quality monitoring stations just outside the zone, you know, hasten to add, and you can see a very strong reduction in air quality throughout those few months since the zone has gone live. So it's certainly having an impact, and I'm talking about him all the time, and they're really happy with how it's going, and now they're looking at how to get this even lower, you know, what to do next, you know, and how can they make the most of the camera infrastructure and the back office that they've got to maintain this key environmental improvement that they have in Bath. So moving on from Bath now, we go north of the border up to Edinburgh, another one of our clients who we're working closely with, and clean air zones in Scotland are low emission zones. It's slightly different, still using the same Euro standard minimums for what is allowed to drive in and out of the zone, but the big difference in Scotland is that you cannot pay to go in these low emission zones. There's going to be 4 up in Scotland for the big cities, and that is a really big difference, and for me a better solution. You know, I drove into London a couple of weeks ago and I had to pay. I've got an old car, I hold my hand up, and but I would have had a fine if I'd have driven into Edinburgh. So there's no way to pay to go and drive in these low emission zones. Another difference, and again from the enforcement side, is their penalty charges have a stacking system. It goes up and up and up and up. The more and more you pick up PCNs, that the value of them goes up. So if you're breaching every day, your PCN goes up. A surcharge is where it's called. It goes up and up and up and up and up, which is again another huge deterrent for these zones, and to really tidy and clean up the vehicles that are driving into some of the big cities and towns in Scotland. So a great solution. Moving quickly on now, hope I'm not overrunning on time, just check there we go. So low traffic neighbourhoods, it's a hot topic. Lots and lots of schemes went in during lockdown, lots and lots of schemes are still in, but there are many more and more every day that are now being pulled out for a variety of reasons, and for the most it's public backlash, and you could argue some of these schemes went in without enough consultation or engagement, but I'm not here to criticize how these schemes have gone in. What I wanted to do today is just to run through one of the schemes that we've been working on in Hammersmith and Fulham, and it's interestingly a traffic management problem that I could never manage to address at my time at Hammersmith as head of transport. It was rat running. It's a classic, you know, inner city problem, and one of the bridges over the Thames there. It's a really tricky issue to address, and Hammersmith and Fulham seem to have got it right from what they've done. Now this is it is a low traffic neighbourhood, but it's got a different name in Hammersmith and Fulham. It's called a traffic congestion and pollution reduction scheme. Now that's off the back of public engagement. That's what the locals essentially wanted to call it, you know, and it really gives a flavour of probably why this scheme has been successful, because of the engagement with those who live there and use the roads, either driving or cycling or walking. And it's a low traffic neighbourhood, but without any barriers. So this is a totally ANPR enforced scheme, and it's only a handful of streets that have restrictions, and it is the flying motorcycle. I'm sure you all have your own views and opinions on the flying motorcycle as a sign, as a restriction, but this is what Hammersmith and Fulham have used, and there are cameras down in the bottom right, and it's been a success. It's been generally well received by the public, both living within the zone and generally speaking for those who drive within the area, and there's very little infrastructure. There's none of these barriers or blockages which tend to get bad press. This is a pretty well accepted scheme, and it's got some pretty decent results. If you look at the right hand side of this page, there's some impressive traffic reduction stats. Now, this is off the back of, generally speaking, Hamilton and Fulham are back to pre-pandemic levels of traffic overall for the borough, but within and around the low traffic neighbourhood, they've had an incredible reduction in traffic, and even on some of the outer streets. Now, on the left here, you can see the air quality monitors that have gone up to manage and to look at the wider environmental impact of this scheme. Is traffic, avoiding it or in locally or even strategically? And this is the largest network of air quality monitors in Europe, I believe. It's an incredible array and a powerful data set, which I'm sure that the council will be using to influence future policy and help understand where this traffic is going, what it's doing, and help them move forward with their net carbon plans. Moving swiftly on now, only a couple of slides left. Workplace parking levy. It's a topic I'm passionate about. I've talked about it at conferences, and we've got one coming up in October in Nottingham for anyone in the north to look at Nottingham schemes. And if you look at the top left here, you can see these why we're doing this. This is why Nottingham are doing this. Congestion, air pollution. It's those three pillars. They chose to put this scheme in, and we've all seen and read about Nottingham. It's a massive success. The revenue they're generating, how they're investing. They're probably going to be one of the first cities to achieve net carbon in 2028, I believe. It's a huge success. There's investment from businesses. They want to be associated with this city, regardless of the levy, to charge private businesses for their own staff parking. Even during the pandemic, they've managed to still maintain revenue streams and maintain that investment in transport and traffic, and which is why they're doing it. Hounslow looking at a workplace levy as well, something that we've been doing at Project Centre on engaging with the public. And when we talk about public here, we talk about the businesses and how they view and feel about the system. And the bottom bit here is it's around what is in it for the public. And it's not just another tax. It's the reinvestment, and it is health. We talk about benefits, and it's health and well-being is really what we're trying to achieve as transport professionals. It's and that's what we should focus on. I think this is my second to last slide, and I'm mindful this is an enforcement summit, and we're talking about improved compliance and good compliance. And this is my only one sales slide. We operate in the foreign registered vehicle enforcement field. We have our company called Part Trade who do this, and to achieve full enforcement and compliance, we're going to need to address foreign registered vehicles. So there's many of them driving around the UK, regardless of Brexit. And Brexit is a play here. It's complex. Data sharing across the EU and Europe is interesting, and each country has its own set of rules and regulations. It is fascinating. And one of the things that brought this to the forefront is that JACU, the Joint Air Quality Units, have mandated this as a requirement for clean air zone. So any city going through a clean air zone process has to have a solution in for foreign vehicles, and this is why I think it's probably relevant to talk about this today. And as I say, we have a whole suite of solutions for local authorities who want to address this, rather than just write off some of these PCNs, which tends to happen.
Nick, are you about to wind up, because we're sort of running over time now?
Absolutely. There you go. That's my last slide, Nick. I'm all done. Over to you. Thank you, everyone. Apologies for not being signed into the right section earlier on, but I hope you all have a good day and found that of some interest. There's my contact details there. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you very much, Nick. Sorry to nudge you at the end.
No problem.
Let's move straight on to Rob Shoebridge from Derby City Council, who is going to talk about encouraging compliance, which of course is the end product we all want to achieve. Rob, over to you.
Thanks very much, and good morning, everybody. A bit of a whirlwind tour in the next 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes about some of the things we've done in Derby, about thinking differently through the pandemic, and some of this was before the pandemic, looking at the horizon, scanning what's likely to be happening, and then being responsive, being proactive as opposed to being reactive. So let's open up our minds. Parking enforcement is about changing driver behaviour, and we kind of have a variety of methods to achieve that. In terms of people who get PCNs or in the private industry, you know, parking charge notices, can we make paying sound attractive? Can we take advantage of opportunities that engagement led by our customers offer? Does the quality of debt improve when we actually engage more with our debtors and our customers? Are there even opportunities to get cases paid when every other avenue, including enforcement agents, has failed? And how can we improve collection rates whilst ensuring customers are treated on their own individual merits, which is really, really important given the current climate? And remember what enforcement's about. It's about changing driver behaviour. So we're not going to have a fire drill, but the fire service is successful. If I call the fire service to my chip pan is set on fire, the fire brigade will arrive and select the appropriate hydrant to put it out. Okay, and I often think and talk to our team about making sure we select the correct fire hydrant, the correct fire extinguisher to put the fire out. Choose the correct tool, because then you'll have more likely chance of success. So just bear that slide in mind as we move through some of the slides. So first of all, can we make paying sound attractive? Well, no one really wants to pay a PCN, do they? You know, it's always very begrudgingly, but can we make it sound attractive? So one thing we're looking at doing, and it's towards the end stages now, is when our customers engage with us and try and buy a pay and stay using the My Permit app that we have in Derby, real opportunity to engage with them. They're wanting to buy service offers, but they owe us a penalty charge notice as well. Let's get the data working together. So I log onto a street in Derby on my Permit smart app on the smartphone, and I want to buy a parking stay, but I've got an outstanding ticket. What a fantastic opportunity to try and engage with that debtor. So the debtor gets a nudge to say that they've actually got an outstanding ticket, and if we just go back to the slide, we are saying to them, if they pay for that ticket now, or those tickets now, the stay that they want is going to be free. Oh, got a bit of a deal here, maybe. You know, this is sounding quite attractive. So, yes, go on then, I'll do that. So it links up neatly to our payment portal. And they can pay. However, something else that we've got working in the background, if I arrive on a street in Derby and want to use the pay and display facilities with My Permit, and I've got some outstanding PCNs, an alert gets sent in the background to our revenue protection team to tell them that this vehicle with an outstanding debt is parked on this street. The stay is ending at such and such a time, the PCN count is a certain number, and the outstanding amount in this case is £210. Good data for our revenue protection team, and they can proactively then go and engage with that debtor, knowing that that vehicle's parked there. It's not about clamping it, or it's not about towing it away. It's about trying to engage with that debtor at that particular time. We know what time they're likely to come back to the vehicle, so we can be hanging about to try and engage with them. And this is just what it looks like throughout the process: the chance to pay the PCN now, the payment portal, and the nudge to our debtor. So, question is, could this become the norm amongst local authorities and private operators? It's aimed at getting payments and helping customers before matters escalate. You know, I often think if cases go to the enforcement agents, have we failed? Could we have done something more? Now, clearly not with the hardcore people who don't want to engage. But some people just forget about it. They move address. They've not updated the DVLA. It's slipped their mind. They can't pay at the time, but they can pay at a different time in the month. That effective engagement allows us to try and get those payments from our customers before we kind of have to go to really punitive measures of instructing the enforcement agents. But of course, we know some people, however much we try, won't engage. But let's try, and it's working really well in Derby. So the next question I want to pose: can we take advantage of opportunities that engagement led by our customers offer? And in Derby, we've put our refuse site on the My Permit app. So if you want to go and empty your contents of your shed at our tip, you can do so, but you've got to book that visit on My Permit. What that allows us to do is use the data, and you can just see a little video playing in the background, use that data and crunch the data against the parking debts. So someone wants to use a council service at the tip and use that visit at the tip. They also owe PCNs. What kind of company would allow you to keep using services if you still owe them money? Well, probably the council if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. What this allows us to do is crunch that data together. Who's using the tip? Who owes us money? Yep, we've got some outcomes here. And what then that allows us to do is use the data from My Permit with the telephone number or the email address, and then look to contact the debtors directly. We move on to that proactive front foot. We want to help them. So in this video that we're just seeing playing, we use an SMS system, and our revenue protection team have got a series of templates. They'll choose an appropriate template and send that customer a nudge to say, see, you booked a visit at the tip, you actually owe a PCN as well. Here's my phone number. Please give me a call. Let's try and settle the matter. That gets recorded on our notice processing system, which is chipside. And then if we do end up at the warrant stage, if a customer says, I've never heard anything about it before, I want to go to tech, we can simply direct them to the audit trail, which says, we sent you a text on this date reminding you of this, so let's not be hearing it's the first you know about it. Proactive engagement. There's the customer ringing. I want to make payment. We've got a revenue protection team within our parking services and traffic and transportation now, and their job is solely to engage with our customers who owe money. A new team, it's an area of work that we never kind of did proactively before. If we sent our statutory letters out, we've done what's expected of us. Yeah, we've done the bare minimum, I completely agree. But what more could we do? How could we turn good into great? And by having our revenue protection team who look at debt recovery, in the first 8 weeks of them being in post, I've seen the collections increase. That tells me what we're doing is effective, and we use the data responsibly to increase that parking debt, which is also important to support some of the initiatives that we've heard from the earlier speakers this morning. So we're talking about engagement with debtors, those people who actually don't want to pay. You know, does what we do in the early stages improve the quality of the debts that we send to the enforcement agents? So we've heard Nick talk about the camera cars, and we've got a couple of these in Derby. And our camera cars, we've got the registration numbers of vehicles programmed into its brains, the brains of the cars, people who owe debts. Okay, so the driver's driving along, and if a vehicle owes a debt, it will send a message not only on the screen in the car, but also to our digital enforcement hub. And here we can see a map on one of the screens in the hub, and that will be plotting where debtors are spotted. And then what we can do is use that data to say this vehicle is parked here. That data can then get all analysed and crunched up by the revenue protection team to say, we know this vehicle is here. If that vehicle is with the enforcement agents, we can seamlessly update the portals of the two companies that we use and say this vehicle is spotted here every Thursday morning at 8 AM. I await the collection. I await your engagement with them. Of course, you know, it could be argued we're doing some work there for the enforcement agents, but it's all about achieving that end outcome. But it's not just about being penal with that data. So one vehicle had 8 PTNs in a residential street. They've got residence permits on the street. It was clear from our spotting that that vehicle belonged to a resident on the street. Some local inquiries by the revenue protection team revealed that he was a resident, indeed a resident, and he wasn't aware of the need to buy a permit, and he wasn't sure how to buy a permit. That doorstep engagement meant he could backdate a permit for £25, and the 8 PCNs were cancelled. Opportunity and engagement. One vehicle was seen parked 20 occasions at the roadside. It had got warrants with the enforcement agents. The debtor portals were updated on the website, on the portals, and the enforcement agents went out, clamped the vehicle, and collected. What's really, really important in all of this, though, is that you've got your data governance all lined up and correct. making sure you've got the information sharing agreements, the privacy impact assessments, and the data governance. It's about using that data that you've got responsibly. So talk about those fire extinguishers, taking you back to the start. Okay, so the resident, we didn't need to be penal with that resident. We wanted to engage with him, wanted to educate him. There's a scheme here to assist you park and get a parking place in your street, which is near the university campus in Derby. Please buy a permit. That extinguisher worked. Our hardcore debtor, who didn't want to engage with us, needed a different kind of extinguisher, and that worked as well. As I say to our team, it doesn't matter how many times you get success. The first time data governance goes wrong, none of the extinguishers have worked. It's really, really important aspect. This is just a kind of thing, an image of what happens when the car spots a debtor. So the driver will be alerted on the onboard computer that the vehicle ABC123 is a debtor. And that then opens up another couple of opportunities for our team to engage. So this is a note that we put on the vehicle. And again, you'll see there's a bit of the nudge tactics there with the colours and the positioning of the documents. And this is our CN1 document, our car notice one. And this is essentially trying to tell the driver, look, we need to talk to you. It's not stuck on in a traditional yellow PCN envelope. It's in a green one that on the front says, here to help. Something green on my windscreen. It's a bit different to what I'm used to getting. I better look at this. Of course, sometimes this fails. It doesn't reveal the outcome that we want. And traditionally, we send letters through first-class post to people. There's some people that will actually go around and post a letter hand-delivered. There's no stamp on it. Again, you'll see the nudge approach that we've adopted, positions, colours, and at the bottom, don't be in the 12% who end up ignoring things and being dealt with by the enforcement agents. And we found these letters very effective because all of a sudden, it's not just another letter that's come with a prepaid envelope from the council. Someone's been to my address and pushed this through the letterbox. This is different. The council mean business. It's been very effective. And again, it's all aimed at engaging with people before we end up going for a warrant. Are there opportunities to get cases paid, even when someone's evaded the enforcement agents? And this is a new piece of work that we've been trialing for the last 3 months. And not many or any authorities currently use the powers available in moving matters back to the regional court to seek judgments that are available in the Traffic Management Act. So what we have done now is devised a new letter, and again you'll see the nudge kind of approach, and it's very personal. My name is Lewis and I'm a revenue protection officer. I can see that despite exhaustive attempts to engage, and it talks about the 24%, my purpose in writing is to give you one final opportunity. So these letters, we thought, okay, will it work? And on the right hand side, where the eyes tend to go first, county court action, we're looking at some of the things that we can do in the Traffic Management Act. We're looking at using some more powers. And these powers are significant because they may well affect your file, court. And of course, we can't affect the credit ratings or have a judgment which is effective given the Traffic Management Act currently. But these are powers that we can use. Why don't we use them? So would this work? That was my question. Well, let's give it a try. So 214 letters were sent out on one Wednesday afternoon. Lewis had 42 telephone calls the next day, and 102 payments came from those 214 letters. Interestingly, the CCTV cases, the payment rate's 34% higher than on-street PCNs. What this told us is that even though enforcement agents might not be able to get the payment, and we've exhausted everything before, there's still an opportunity. There's still an opportunity. Now, of course, some people might move address, some people's circumstances might have changed, but what it does tell us is there are chances even if you do keep engaging with people. Moving towards the end, how can we improve collection rates whilst ensuring our customers are treated on their own individual merits? I think looking at the pandemic, have local authorities, have private operators been too risk averse? We're told as responsible people within local government, never take a one-size-fits-all approach, treat people on their individual merits. So why have we just taken a blanket approach in some areas, stopping enforcement or stopping collections? Surely that's not proportionate to the individual. Do we have team members who have good listening skills? It's imperative. Are we apathetic? I've heard that before. Yeah, that old chestnut. Let's listen. It's really important. Have we been fluid in our approach, or have we relied on previous approaches? This is the way we've always done it. Do we open our minds up? Do we challenge ourselves? You know, I love being challenged by my team and the team coming up with ideas to say, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Fantastic. You know, July tomorrow, it's furlough, 10% being paid by employers. Will that mean there's some more redundancies? Are we being proactive, or are we just reactive? Do we scan the horizon? What's likely to happen? How can we respond? Do our customers' needs change based on what's likely to happen? Last couple of slides. This is just something else we're moving into. Within Derby, historically, if somebody collided with some of our street furniture, our teams tried to collect the debt from the insurance companies or the driver. We weren't that effective at it. We've now moved this area of work into our traffic and parking team, and we are now collecting these debts. So if someone collides with some signals or a roundabout, our team will look to collect that debt using our tried and trusted methods. We've put 10 test cases through, and for those 10 first-class stamps, £4,000 was recovered in the first week. I think what we often forget is, you know, parking isn't just that. Many other areas can learn from the products that we've got in parking and the things we do in parking, and this is just one of those avenues. And another thing that we're working on is truancy. So again, instead of the parents receiving something through the post from the council, which is a laborious process and very much driven by people, automation is going to take over, and we're moving truancy onto our parking platform onto Chipside, meaning that our revenue protection team can again look at engaging effectively with parents, as opposed to that letter saying we want £140 from you in the next 14 days. Are there some reasons? So again, moving parking into other areas. We've heard this morning about the 3 E's, which is really interesting because that's what we always think about in parking enforcement. I think there's 2 more, and that's what I really want to get over this morning, and I hope I've been successful in doing so. It's about effective engagement. Going back to the start, parking enforcement is about changing driver behaviour, and we can do that if we select the correct fire extinguisher. Some people need the water, some people need the foam. I hope that that's been interesting and opened a few ideas and a few minds up. And thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Rob. And fascinating to see how you're using big data now in a way I think that lots of authorities should be doing, but I don't suppose enough are. Let me finally move on, last but by no means least, to Richard Walker from the North East Essex Parking Partnership, who is going to talk about his partnership working.
Thanks very much, Nick, and good morning, everybody. We'll take 10 minutes or so to quickly look around some of the areas that partnership working can help. First, I mentioned I'm Richard Walker, Group Manager, North Essex Parking Partnership. We're a partnership of 7 authorities, county and 6 districts and borough, and a few town and parish councils besides. So the background to us is already working in partnership, but partnerships don't just have to be local authority, can be wider than that. So next slide, please. The Traffic Management Act encourages us to work together, doesn't it? And that and sessions like today's always bring fresh ideas for me. I always learn something when we come to sessions like this, and we try and take from that what we can and work in partnership with others. So it doesn't just need to be local authority, the partnership. It could be local authority in the supplier. It could be local authority in public sector. It could be private sector somewhere else. It could be nearby, or it could be quite far distant. We've worked with Rob at Derby to think about some of the new ideas that we've got coming along. So besides the partnership bringing us resilience and some standard to our strategy making and the ability to educate differently, use social media, try and change culture in parking and all the rest of it with efficiency, also brings these new ideas. And I think that's really why I want to centre around today. But we've talked a lot about technology as well this morning, haven't we? And data. And I think with technology always comes the need to communicate further. So we'll just have a quick look in a few minutes now at one or two of the projects that our partnership's been working on, and hopefully some ideas out of that and how we've worked in partnership with others. So next slide, please. was going to talk around these, what are there, 10 or so things on here, and how we've worked in partnership, but how partnerships with others and different agencies or even different people can help you either patrol differently, patrol more efficiently, think of new ideas and new technology in the way you're doing things. So let's start with limited weighting bay sensors. We're looking at a trial of these. Want to put in around 1,000 of them, and we've noticed that, of course, limited weighting, it's quite labor intensive the way we do it, and we collect a lot of data but throw most of that away when we come back in an hour's time and find that those vehicles have all moved on, and a new set of cars are parked whose data we also need to take. If we can gather that and collect it in a different way, I can use that to mobilize my parking attendants, my civil enforcement officers in a different way, but also a bay sensor might have much more value in partnership with others. If there's an electric vehicle there, we could stop what's called ice blocking, where a petrol engine or diesel engine car is parked on an EV charging bay. We could show if that bay is free, or if it's not free and it's not charging, is the vehicle on there? Does that need to be moved? Does it need a penalty? If you think about the way blue badge holders might look around the town for different stops, maybe have to stop in different places to get nearer access to their destination. How can we show blue badge holders that bays might be free or might be becoming free for their needs around town? And maybe through the bay sensors and some technology and some information that gives us, we can pass that on and maybe avoid some of the enforcement issues that we need to as well. Rob alluded there to parking cameras outside schools, and these next two pieces really go hand in hand. We've got the education piece with our 3PR, 3 Parking Rules Initiative, which tends to be the carrot, if you like. We're cajoling people to park in the right place, but if they can't or won't, more specifically, then in my patch we have 303 schools and 40 something CEOs. You can do the maths and find out that my CEO is not going to be there very often, but a camera outside a school looking at the zigzags, one attendant sitting remotely can look at 4 cameras at once, and all of a sudden I can use those other resources somewhere else. So working in partnership with the school first in education, and I'm working with the highway authority, we can use those next 2 things in partnership and really solve a problem where we're called to lots of different places all at the same time. Thinking as well around the way we've got our TROs, our traffic regulation orders, now mapped digitally, and could we use that in a different way? Thinking about partnerships now with our suppliers, get the suppliers working together and send things that our camera cars see on one of the TROs that we've got mapped, send those details to our civil enforcement officer and make them a bit more efficient. And the next point there I said is patrol like it's 1969. We're trying to, rather than a traditional enforcement beat like we've had right since this all started, to become more efficient and send maybe a list of things to do with bay sensors, with ideas from the patrol cars with cameras on them, to send our civil enforcement officers from place to place to place. Can we work in partnership differently with residents? And can we use patrols to enable deliveries, maybe to show when areas might become free or available for deliveries to happen? We've all used deliveries a lot more during the pandemic, and there may be some technology there which uses some of the data that we're already gathering to work in partnership in different ways with different people there too. Final point on that top line there is around roadworks, and we've worked in partnership with the highway authority to, when they put in a road closure, to resurface the road or surface dress the road, to put in a clearway as well. And with that we put in, of course you can move a car if it's parked and receives a PCN. If you put in a traffic regulation order over that area, can save you having to return time and time again later on to patch the piece a car was parked on, because you could move the car out of the way. And the county reckons there they've saved something like £60,000 each year by not having to return to do that again and again and again. And I think the signage and some quite marked tow-away zone signage goes alongside the roadworks pre-work there, and really sets the scene for that. So it's all about education, communication. Can we look at the parking account maybe? At the moment, in a lot of pay and display type areas or pay before parking, we have to get people to guess how long they're going to be. But can we work with others, and I'll bring on to this next point around connected car parking as well, to pay after parking maybe on account? Does it really matter that people have to put money in a machine before they go parking and have to think how long they're going to be, or should they be able to pay afterwards? And if they do pay afterwards, can we link that to more environmental charges, which seem to be something coming to the fore? And we need to work in partnership with other people to think about the environment and how that might work, or with other districts. Thinking about how we work with our business improvement district and parking as well. We've recently launched this week, in fact, a discount scheme with traders where if you go into the shop, and that gives them more footfall, you can show the machine in the shop your parking stay on your app, and you can get a discount for it. There we are. We're working now with the business improvement district and traders and the parking authority. Can we work with others with the technology that we've already got as well, either to stop and cut down the need for enforcement at all, or just to broaden beyond parking the use of our app? And I know that Rob there mentioned other uses where he's branched out into waste and other areas. We've branched out to park and ride and to leisure centres, and now to think about moving traffic with the active travel measures in the high street. High Street has been closed, but we still need to permit drivers to drive down there if they've got some access needs. So permits for that have been implemented through our app. Thinking about active travel as well, can we think about different uses for the car park, and can we work with authorities and others as well to think about park active and similar schemes to that, where we can have different uses for long stay car parks? And here we're working with the customer, I suppose, to give them a choice or another option, and a different tariff maybe that you can unlock with a different set of services in the app to park in a different way and get some benefit for thinking differently about the way you might do that last mile. And then finally, for me, looking over the horizon a little bit, I suppose, into the future. And we're being led down the road of looking at mobility hubs and the last mile and different ways of deliveries and things. Can we adapt some of the places that we've already got? Can we use park and rides differently? Can we use multi-storey car parks in a different way in partnership with others? And data, I think, will become more to the fore. So just in conclusion there, a quick gallop through some of the ways we've worked in partnership with others, and what can we use that we've already got, but I think importantly, how do we tell people about it to stop having to use the enforcement side of it? So there we are. I'll hand back to Nick now, and I think we're going to move into a time of around the table.
Thank you very much indeed, Richard. We've sort of crept into our discussion period, but I think we've still got some time left. And just looking at what people have said, all of the interventions have got some really great ideas. And in many cases, the presenters have told us about their achievements of what they've done. But my first question to really all of you is just how much effort have you put into telling the public what you're doing and why you're doing it, and more particularly in some cases how effective you are? Because I know that things like Jack's presentation was very much about public engagement about what they should be doing, but he didn't say anything about how effective the scheme has been. Jack, I don't know if you want to tell us just a couple of words about that.
Very good question, and a very hard question. It's really difficult to get direct air quality metric improvements from specific actions for anything, and idling in particular, because it's such a localized source of pollution. Local authorities have responsibilities to measure pollutants, and they'll have monitoring stations and diffusion tubes and all the works, but it's really difficult to zero in on one environmental factor when you've got all these things like weather and things. So it's basically really, really difficult, and we've tried to kind of run some research projects that show real-time exposure, but we don't have the budget for that really. So it's basically, we know the science behind air pollution. We know that the emissions created by idling vehicles are toxic. It's just really difficult to demonstrate that with a number, with a metric. Yeah, we've kind of done some research that shows the emissions profile of various idling vehicles, so we know it's a problem, and we know that it's also something that's so easy to fix. Like, idling's not gonna cost anyone anything, just switching off your engine. That's, I think, why this project is a good one to be quite a ubiquitous way into air pollution for a lot of Londoners. You know, like yeah, there's no reason why you shouldn't switch off your engine, but it is really difficult to get a solid bit of science behind some data about something like nitrogen dioxide levels. I hope that sort of dodges the question quite elegantly.
Well, it does in a way, but I suspect that one of the issues coming up will be about the need for people who are on the receiving end of your messages to understand that they are actually making a difference, not just in principle making a difference.
Absolutely.
Nick, and is from the schemes that you mentioned, again, how much effort is being put into telling the public how effective they really are? You did show from Bath some of the air quality improvements there, but for the other schemes, Edinburgh and so on, are they putting that effort into telling the public it's really working? I think you're muted. Technical issues there? I think we're going to have to pass on Nick for a moment. Rob, again, you had a lot of really good ideas about how you're engaging with people immediately, but have you given much publicity to what the outcome has been, both for the council but also for the residents who live in that area as well?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think within parking we often hide our light under a bushel and we don't shout enough about the good work that we do. And I think there's a real need for us to change that, and you know, about the positive parking agenda, about being positive, and certainly, you know, the people that our debt collection, debt protection and revenue team deal with are a group of people. Now, what we have to remember, that is a really diverse group of people, but it's about engaging with those people when they come to us. That's when we find it effective, Nick. Moving on to the next stage about how do we celebrate that success. It's a really emotive piece, because I don't think we want to be going all over Twitter to say, yes, we've engaged with people and 202 have paid today. It's finding that balance.
If you had evidence on compliance, you can say, well done, Derby, you're actually following the rules now and traffic is moving that much smoother, or air pollution is that much less. That might be a way of doing it.
And this is where our Safe Haven outside schools offering with the 22 enforcement cameras outside schools has worked magnificently. We've achieved compliance improvements of around 82% at some locations, and those graphs that we're used to seeing on the TV now, you know, we started in January 2020 up here with the number of contraventions, and they've just dipped and they're staying very low, and that's been recognised, and we do receive positive feedback about that, and we do celebrate that because it's something we've never been able to achieve before.
Mm-hmm. Nick, I think we can hear you now, I'm told.
Is that right? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good. I do remember the question, Nick. It was around engagement, and you're absolutely right. We're seeing a lot of our local authority clients invest in engagement and more engagement, and even pre-engagement, you know, and going way above sort of consultation and talking to the public around what they want, you know, what they want in their streets, and it's a real growth area. I think when I started at Marston, our engagement team at Project Centre was about 2 or 3 people. I think it's 10 now. So there's a real demand out there for council wanting to invest in understanding what the public want and gathering their thoughts. We worked with Reading Council. They spent a huge amount of money on a pre-engagement exercise for their LTP, their local transport plan, you know, looking at trying to set the scene for some of these challenging decisions that they know they're going to have to make in terms of road charging, whether or not, you know, to charge for emission-based parking or anything like that. And they got, I think, about 5,000 responses. It was the most successful engagement exercise I've ever had. And generally speaking, they got support from the public for some of these tough decisions. They set out this is where we're at, you know, we need to have sustainable solutions. There's the traffic, there's congestion, there's pollution. These are the options we're looking at. What do you think? And generally speaking, the public said, right, yeah, we get that, we understand. And yes, there was support, and it really set the scene for as and when they need to take those decisions to make them, you know, having that public support, which is key. I mean, if you think about consultation, they tend to be statutory. If you've got local transport plans, air quality management plans and action plans, they're all quite statutory. But what's happening now, I'm seeing, is that councils are going above and beyond the statutory minimum, and, you know, really trying to understand what it is that the public want and need from their council services. You know, Rob talked around the whole range of different council services that are now coming into the mix, and enforcement of parking is just one of them. So absolutely, yes, to answer your question, Nick, there's a huge, I think we as an industry are getting better at talking to the public, and that's really key for me to understand what they want out of the services that we provide, you know, as local authorities and suppliers.
Yeah, Richard, how about you? Are you doing this in North East Essex as well? Because I know in my experience, so many local councils really were very nervous about talking about parking control. They always thought it produced electoral pain. I had the other view that the more you talk about it, the more you say why you're doing it, the more acceptable it was going to be.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, isn't it, about communication, that the more of that we do, and the bigger voice that we've got, we can start to answer. I mean, we don't need to promote ways that people can target us with enforcement issues, but what we do need to do is talk more about the way we do things, and positively. There's all sorts of different types of media that we can use, be that video, be it social media, be it newsprint, and just press releases. I think it's very important to engage people at an early stage, to say when they can engage in consultation. It's important to tell people what the projects are and how they're going, but it's also important to report after the fact as well and tell people how it's gone or what you've been doing. So all through that, there's different sorts of communications and different sorts of skills needed throughout. And we engage a communications officer from within one of the partner boroughs to work on our behalf, and they're just one stage removed from parking. And I think that separation also helps, because we're very good at acronyms. We can TMA and RTRA until it comes out of our ears, but the public don't always understand that, and it's the way you portray some of these things as well that I think will help a greater understanding.
And in a way, this turns back to one of the comments that Jack made about the difficulty of enforcing idling where you have no street sign. One of the things that I encountered when enforcing the London nighttime and weekend lorry ban was that there are other ways of communicating which can make enforcement effective without street signs, so long as you do it well enough. And is that something you're looking at, Jack?
Absolutely. So street signs are a requirement for FBNs, for PCNs, the higher one. It's been a long morning. Yeah, a good chunk of our boroughs, I think it's about 8 of them, are enforcing with that route, and they've decided that their own less formal signage or their own other ways of raising awareness about idling being a contravention that you could be fined for, that they've taken that to be enough. A lot of the local authorities we work with are very risk averse, so they are waiting on signage to emerge from Department for Transport, and that's not something that I think is going to happen anytime very soon. So yes, there are definitely ways of enforcing effectively and kind of getting the word out to the public about certain issues, be it idling, anything else, without official signage, but it really helps things, I'm sure.
Now, Mike Mars has actually asked a question for you all, And he says, does the panel think that due to TfL now being in such a huge financial hole, is the expansion of the ultra-low emission zone a done deal to claw back lost revenue or to actually lower pollution? Both as an answer, he says, isn't allowed. Would anyone like to comment on that?
No,
I'll
my funders, no.
I think the data will start to help.
The expansion of the ULEZ was probably agreed and decided upon pre-TfL's current black hole. So I'd say the latter, but it certainly will help lost revenue.
Anyone else want to hazard a comment here?
I think the way it's reported, and I was going to say that the data will help see the success or otherwise of the scheme, and the openness with data transparency, I think, is a really important part of what we need to and the way we need to communicate. If all the data is available, then the thing should become clear in itself.
I think that's probably true. I'm not certain it will produce enough income to fill the whole of TfL's finances, personally. I think we've now just about come to the end of our time here. Let me thank all of you then for your contributions. They've been really helpful, and enjoy the coffee break, and we'll be back at 12 o'clock. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.